frequently asked question I have is, should coaching be confidential? A few years ago, I was at the Learning Forward conference, and I met my mentor, Michael Fullen, who had an enormously positive influence on my life and who generously spent a lot of time with me when I studied with him at the University of Toronto. I read just about everything he wrote. In fact, when I was working with him, I had literally read everything that he'd published. And anyway, Michael sat down with me and we had a little time together. And he said to me, "Do you think coaching should be confidential?" Well, I was ready for that question because I studied coaching. I said, "Yeah, definitely." And he said, "I don't." This is kind of a bummer because this is my mentor. Immediately he disagrees with what I had to say. And he went on to say that I think it should be a situation in a school where there's just transparency and people are in and out of people's classrooms and there isn't any hesitancy to speak up. And I think ultimately that is the goal you want. You want a setting where people feel really comfortable, so psychologically safe that it's just natural to say what they think and ask for help, get the help they need. But often that psychological safety isn't in place in an organization. People aren't that comfortable opening up. And so I would say in other cases, you may want to have a policy around confidentiality. It's just a simple thing. The greater the degree of confidentiality, the greater the degree of the openness. The less confidentiality, the less likely the people are to be open. And people generally don't talk to their administrators in the same way they talk with their peers. You can have an administrator walking down the hall and there's a big party going on and everybody's happy and laughing and it's after school and there's just kind of energy. Principal walks in the room and the conversation stops. Well, you'd like to have the coach go in the room and have the conversation keep going. But if people perceive the coach as kind of like an administrator, they might be hesitant to open up and be vulnerable and ask for help when you'd like them to ask for help. So I think having a policy around confidentiality is really important. Now, I'm not going to tell you what it should be. I'll give you my suggestions that I think you have to decide in your own setting. But I will say this, the most important thing about confidentiality is that there is clear understanding across the system about what the policy is. And then the coach and the administrator have to live by that policy. If the coach says coaching is confidential and then violates the confidentiality, essentially ends up being dishonest with teachers, they will know. They will suss it out. They will be able to tell, and they won't trust the coach. And similarly, if administrators ask questions of coaches that put the coach in an awkward position where the coach is like, "I don't think I can answer this question in light of what we said about confidentiality," that doesn't work either. You need to have a clear policy and live by it. But if you ask me, what would my policy be? When we've done coaching and major research projects, our policy has always been the coach will tell the administrator, "This is who I'm working with, and this is what we're working on." But the coach doesn't add any evaluative information, like how the teacher's doing or what they see or what they're seeing. The idea is, if the principal wants to know how the teacher's going, the principal should go in the classroom and observe for herself and see exactly what's happening in the classroom. So confidentiality is a thorny thing. It's probably going to be a little bit different in different settings. Ideally, it wouldn't be necessary because of the psychological safety of the organization. But most organizations aren't there. And the last thought is, when you work with a teacher weekly and you meet with them every week on top of being in their classroom, you're going to see things that they may not want to share. And so having a policy around confidentiality can make it safer to have the coaching conversation. It can move things forward. It can lead to better things for teachers and for kids.